When I asked a few of my friends what their favorite kind of pudding was, I was pretty amazed when most of them said it was butterscotch. If you're one of those people, then you're gonna love this one because today we're making old-fashioned creamy butterscotch pudding. The ingredients couldn't be simpler, starting with milk. I'm using whole milk today, but you can certainly use 2% for this, it'll still work. To this, I'm gonna add 3 tablespoons of cornstarch, and this is gonna help thicken our pudding. If you don't have cornstarch, you can use arrowroot powder. Now, you're probably going to have to stir this again later, but let's just set it aside for now. And now into a saucepan, I'm going to add 2 tablespoons of unsalted butter and half a cup of brown sugar. I'm going to start cooking this over medium heat, stirring constantly. And basically what we're making here is butterscotch candy, and this is a very important part of the process. Stir it around until it comes to a boil, just like this. Make sure your heat is on low and keep a close eye on it, because this can burn really easily. Oh, and I almost forgot, we need to add a 1/4 teaspoon of salt to this. You do not want to leave this out, guys, or your pudding's gonna be bland nation. Every now and then I get a little forgetful when I'm making these videos. I can't believe I remembered at the very last minute. So let your caramel cook gently for about 2 to 3 minutes like you see here. And now you want to start adding the milk and cornstarch mixture. Start off with about half. And right away it's going to look like something's gone wrong because all that candy is going to start clumping up at the bottom of the pan. Don't worry about this, it's all going to smooth out later. Now just go ahead and add in all the rest of that milk, and now we have to let it come to a boil. That's going to take a while though, so no need to babysit it too much. Oh, and if there are any bits of caramel stuck on your spoon from earlier, stir it back into the pot because that's where all the flavor is. Don't let it go to waste. Alright, while that comes to a boil, I'm going to take the same measuring cup I used for the milk and I'm going to separate 2 eggs. I only need the yolks. I'm going to save the whites for another recipe another time, and I hope you do the same. There's so many things you can do with egg whites. You can make meringue cookies, pavlovas, macarons, and when you have enough of them, you can even make angel food cake. But now that I've broken that yolk and contaminated those whites, I can pretty much kiss those options goodbye. Because those are all things that require your egg whites to be stiffly whipped. I could whip these egg whites to France and back, and they're not going to stay stable. But that's okay, no big deal. Let's go check on our pudding. Make sure your heat is on a medium-low to medium, and you only really have to stir it every now and then just to make sure it's not sticking to the bottom of the pan. But in about 12 to 15 minutes, this is going to start to boil, and that's when the cornstarch will start to thicken it. Let it cook like this for about 2 minutes, and then it's time to stir in those egg yolks. I'm just going to give this one final stir to make sure it's absolutely not burning on the bottom of the pan. And now I'm going to slowly start drizzling some of this hot mixture into those yolks. Whisk it in quickly. The reason why you want to do this is to raise the temperature of those yolks slowly so that when we add it into the boiling mixture, they don't turn into scrambled eggs. And if you're a beginner at this, then I highly recommend taking your pudding off the heat while doing this. That'll just minimize the risk of it burning. Once you have about half a cup or 3/4 of a cup worth of tempered egg yolk, then now you can add it into the boiling pot. Whisk that in really well and let this cook for an additional minute on medium-low. Those yolks are going to help thicken the pudding a little bit more and add a little additional richness. Alright, after a minute of cooking, you can now take this off the heat, and we have one more ingredient to add, 1 teaspoon of vanilla. And these days I usually only measure vanilla with my heart. Go ahead and whisk that in, and now we're pretty much almost done except for one last step. Get yourself a nice bowl, hopefully it's a good retro one like this with mushrooms on it, and now we're going to put this through a strainer. Anytime you make a pudding of this nature, I recommend you always do this. Because no matter how much of a master egg temperer you are, inevitably you're always going to have little bits of cooked egg in your pudding, and you want to strain those out. I mean, you don't want this getting stuck in everyone's teeth. Straining is a sure way to get all your puddings 100% silky smooth. And once you're done that, that's it. There's your beautiful bowl of pudding. So now we have to chill this for about 4 hours, but first you want to cover it with plastic. Press it down so it's directly touching the surface, that way you'll prevent a pudding skin from forming. Though I did read in the comments that some of you actually enjoy pudding skin, so if that's you, forget what I just said. This has been chilling for 4 hours, and I want you to see how smooth and creamy that looks. Always give it a good stir before you serve it. And if you're wondering about those little caramels that are scattered on the table, you can find the recipe for those on this channel too. I've linked it in the description. In fact, that was my very first YouTube video, so try not to laugh too hard if you watch it. But if you make this pudding for that butterscotch lover in your life, I know they're gonna be thoroughly impressed. especially if you top it off with a little bit of whipped cream, because whipped cream makes any pudding better. Just look at that. You're gonna love how amazingly butterscotchy this pudding turns out. As it should, considering we basically had to make butterscotch candy to get here. That's like 2 recipes in one, but you're not even gonna care. This is probably gonna take you back to your childhood and put a great big smile on your face. Because in today's world, we can always use more smiles, don't you think?